All right, it's another show, and that means it's time for pre-cals.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
uh, wait a second, what's going
yeah.
on?
We're missing somebody. We're like a little
Missing?
tricycle without a wheel.
Yeah, turning into a bicycle now. It's kind of odd, right?
Definitely is. Robert is unable to join us today. It's unfortunate. He's definitely going to be missed.
He definitely will be. But I mean, apart from Robert not being here, what else is going on today, Emerson?
Well, we actually have two guests on today, Jerry, which is really unusual for our show. We usually keep it down to one superstar, and now we have two. We've got Dr. David P. White from Brigham Women's and Children in Boston, Massachusetts, who's going to be joining us. We know David White from our time at Phillips Respironics, but he is a professor of medicine at Harvard Medical School and the senior vice president of medical affairs for ApneaMed. Um, when he was the director of the clinical sleep disorders program at Brigham and Women's Hospital for quite some time, and now he's a part-time professor there. He is a past president of the American Academy of Sleep Medicine and the former editor in chief of the Journal of Clinical Sleep Medicine. He has over 250 peer reviewed publications focusing on the pathophysiology of sleep disordered breathing and innovative treatments for OSA. He was the chief medical officer for years at Respironics and later Philips Respironics, where he led clinical research strategies in sleep and respiratory markets. So it's exciting to have him on board with us today. And we also have Dr. Peter C. Gay. Dr. Gay is with the Mayo Clinic, where he is a professor of medicine, consultant in the Division of Pulmonary and Critical Care Medicine with the Department of Internal Medicine. Um, his expertise is the management of chronic respiratory failure, particularly through non invasive ventilation. His research aims to enhance the delivery of non invasive ventilation to patients with conditions such as chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, neuromuscular and restrictive lung diseases, central sleep apnea, hyperventilation syndrome, and cases where CPAP therapy for OSA is unsuccessful. He's actively involved in initiatives to improve Medicare policies to ensure appropriate access to NIV for eligible patients. He's held numerous leadership roles in professional organizations. He's served as president of the National Association for Medical Direction of Respiratory Care and the Society of Anesthesia and Sleep Medicine. Additionally, he's been a board member with the American Academy of Sleep Medicine and the American College of Chest Physicians, contributing to committees focused on home care, sleep medicine, and health policies. For both of these guys, we could go on and on. He also has quite a few peer reviewed publications at 130. So between the two of them, we've got 380 peer reviewed publications that we could have drawn off today. So quite an interesting talk in front of us. We're going to hear a little bit about maybe the fallacy of IPAP. Hard to know what to think about that. You and I've trained a lot of sleep techs and sleep physicians on, EPAP is for apnea and IPAP is for everything else. So kind of interested to see where this is going to go.
It's going to be interesting. And we've had Dr. White on our show before, so it's going to be fun to have him back on and
Yeah,
also to hear the interaction between two of them regarding this fallacy of IPAP or fallacy about the
yeah,
bi-level itself. Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely. Well, let's go to the show and see what they have to say.
All right. On to the show, folks.
Lights off.
Now, a word from our sponsor, Medbridge Healthcare. Medbridge Healthcare is a leading provider of sleep lab management services and home sleep apnea testing. Medbridge partners with hospitals, healthcare systems, and medical academic institutions to offer comprehensive, fully integrated services for sleep disorders.
Welcome, everyone, once again to another episode of Sleep Tech Talk, the sleep podcast with your hosts and friends, Emerson Kerr, Robert Miller, and me, Dr. Gerald George Mannikarote. Folks, we have an amazing episode today. It's a 2-for-1 special. But before we get started, just want to say a huge thanks to our sponsors. Be sure to check them out. And also our clinical sponsor, Sleep Review Magazine. Be sure to check them out as well. And thank you, folks, for all that you're doing to continue to help us grow. We can't thank you enough for all the likes, all the subscriptions, and most of all, the shares. Continue to share with all the people out there that are in the sleep industry, especially the sleep curious. We're getting bigger and bigger, and it's all thanks to you. With that, Emerson, what's going on today?
Well, Jerry, we have a really exciting episode today. We've got two great friends, Dr. David White from Brigham in the big city of Boston, Massachusetts. And we've got Peter Gay, Dr. Peter Gay from the Mayo Clinic in the monstrous town of Rochester, Minnesota. So we're super glad to have them on today as we talk about the fallacy of IPAP. You know, you and I have been working in sleep a long time. We've done a lot of teaching, and we used to say EPAPs for apnea, IPAPs for everything else. So I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
All right. And well, it definitely sounds exciting, and the fallacy of bi-level. And didn't we talk about this a little while back?
We did. We had Dr. White on, so we talked a little bit about KPAP, but we're going to dive right in and ask a couple of questions. So, Dr. Gay, welcome to the show. You're new to Sleep Tech Talk, but not new to us. It's good to see you today. You know, one of the things that both Jerry and I, because of our history with Respironics, would have talked about you a little bit in our clinical education, whether it was about biflex or adaptive servoventilation or even some of the other bi-level type stuff. So you've got quite a history with bi-level for a lot of the sleep technologists and sleep physicians that have ever followed you. So can you tell us a little bit about your journey from where you've been with bi-level to where you are now?
To be honest, I've always been a device guy. I didn't have enough sense to get into pharmaceuticals and be a rich man. But from the very start, I got enchanted with non-invasive ventilation when it was first brought over, really by the French, uh, that had been having success with this. And I was an intensivist. I was planning to do critical care medicine when we started putting masks on people. And there you were treating respiratory failure. You were treating really the people who needed ventilation. And where I most was aware, fashioning our own masks and around 1987, 88 of the patients with neuromuscular disease. And boy, did they need IPAP like nobody's business because they were hypercapnic. And when they came in with a CO2, the same as their PaO2, and you gave them oxygen, they could quickly get a CO2 that would be double their PaO2. And that really made us aware of the difference between ventilating and oxygenation. And what's kind of cool there is that, we only discovered CO2 as a real issue in this century. It was just an afterthought. You looked at the bicarbonate, and that told you something about the disease, but we weren't even aware of the need to ventilate people. It was all about oxygenating. So it's been a neat journey to understand ventilation through the years.
Hey, Dr. Gay, really quickly, if you could just for those folks that don't understand the difference between the two, oxygenation and ventilation, I really appreciate that.
Ventilation is all about moving CO2, and oxygenation is about oxygen, to put it as simple as you can. And when you're ventilating, it's tidal volume and MV. When you're oxygenating, it's all about your PaO2 and oxygen delivery.
That's
Love it.
interesting. So when you transition over to sleep and you look at sort of Mark Sanders' work in the early 90s with bi-level and what we were looking at with just sleep disordered breathing, what do you feel like, was the belief system of that time that really made us embrace that concept that, Dr. Sanders and the team had stumbled upon during that era?
Well, I think that's a misappreciation of the great Mark Sanders, who didn't stumble on anything. He had a keen eyesight on the fact that the people that he was having the most trouble with were the most corpulent. And as such, he was the first one to really stare at the flow signal when these people had their airway open, but still had evidence of flow limitation. And the marvelous article, I'm trying to remember, it's like from 1980, where he had that front. David, you got to remember this, where he had that first page where he just showed that flow signal. He showed flow limitation, and he showed the addition of IPAP. and then removing that in these obese ventilators, obviously the area under that curve was much better for those patients who were being assisted in ventilation, but this was really for obesity ventilation. And of course, they had sleep disordered breathing, and we were talking about OSA and obesity ventilation in the same regard, but we didn't know how to separate the airway from the need to ventilate lungs that had to crush their FRC with their obesity and had two problems.
So, as we kind of look forward, Dr. White, the question is, how did we get this backwards? I mean, we're really doing treatment backwards from what we've been thinking about for the last 30 plus years.
I mean, I think it's an obvious mistake, and I think we all made it because when we had CPAP, I think everybody thought, well, the IPAP is helps ventilation, reduces the work of breathing, so that ought to be good. And this expiratory pressure is uncomfortable. It's where you have to do all this extra work trying to expire, and therefore that's what we need to fix. And so, there became all the various permutations. Mark Sanders did it first by lowering EPAP, and I remember being at a international symposium on sleep and respiration like 1988, and they brought this BiPAP machine in, the respironics people, and put us on it and one thing and another, and we all thought it was great. But it made a lot of sense if you didn't go back and really look at carefully at the physiology that came out during the 90s that showed that basically lowering EPAP affects the upper airway patency, and it does it in a variety of ways, including it affects lung volume, it affects the force in the airway, it does a lot of things. But when you turn the EPAP down, you're going to lose patency. And you can force air across a stenotic airway with just increasing levels of IPAP. That can be done, but it doesn't accomplish much because it's just making it more and more uncomfortable as you crank that IPAP up to try to deal with the problem that you have created by lowering the EPAP. So all that information was there, and it took Bill Noah sort of looking at all that stuff for a couple of years and thinking, this doesn't make perfect sense to me. Why, so therefore we probably shouldn't be reducing the EPAP because that's not getting us what we want. But I think it was a bigger jump, in my mind at least, to think, why don't we lower the IPAP? And maybe that will be more comfortable, because lowering the IPAP does not deal with the upper airway obstruction better. It doesn't deal with it worse either, but it doesn't help the upper airway obstruction. It just turns out that it's a lot more comfortable. And if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense, because we all are completely used to doing all our own breathing and how rapidly we inflate the chest, how fast the air moves in, where we stop an inspiration and whatnot. We do it, 15 times a minute, 24 hours a day. And if you don't need ventilation, like Peter was talking about, then having air blasted into you changes all the normal dynamics of inspiration, which makes it awkward. I'm not saying you can't get used to it, but it's fundamentally awkward. Lowering the IPAP makes that whole inspiratory effort more comfortable. And so that's what we think we're going to buy with KPAP, is a lot greater comfort, equal efficacy, and therefore hopefully better adherence. But I mean, I think the biggest jump was saying we can lower IPAP and it's not going to cost us anything, and it's going to help us in terms of comfort.
Of course, that was unheard of.
Go ahead, Dr. Day, sorry.
The concept that, look, it's like an aqua lung. It's like you take a breath and you get this instant relief. You're getting the air that wouldn't have come to you otherwise. And it was really the marketing that got us, I got to speak for I should say that got me enchanted with the idea that you had to do this to get that snap of relief. We were talking about selling awake phenomena. Sir, you are going to feel this wonderful rush of air. When you ask for it, we'll deliver it. And as far as that expiratory, that's the crap. That's the whiner saying, it's too much air. That's bad. That's what's opening your airway, sir. So once you said, well, we won't give you that bad thing that makes you uncomfortable. We'll give it to you when you want it. That's IPAP. So the marketing sold this thing, and we were totally sucked into this.
That makes sense, because part of what we did next is we brought, the C-flexes and EPR and that sort of thing to market to take away and provide pressure relief on exhalation. So where did we go wrong there, Dr. White, when we think about, what all we accomplished with that type of pressure relief? Where do you think we missed it, in that journey of positive airway pressure?
I'll just say a number of things. We missed it because what I said before, it compromises the airway. You lower the EPAP, no matter what, it's going to compromise the airway. That's step number one. Step number two is that when C-Flex came out, what you're doing when you lower EPAP is obviously you're adding a little pressure support. I mean, that's what Peter's talking about. IPAP's greater than EPAP, you're getting pressure support. And now, whether you set it at one, the EPRs at 1, 2, or 3, all of them are giving it to you. And in addition to compromising the airway, that pressure support has some downside to it if you don't need it. And the downside to it is, one, it increases leak. Two, it can make the mask makes the mask less stable. And number two, it probably contributed to the development of TEXA. TEXA really developed after C-Flex came out. I mean, people started seeing a lot more of it. Nobody had ever really raised it. Robert Thomas started going crazy with his, complex sleep apnea, within a year or two after C-Flex came out. And we made an observation that basically, if you go back and look at titrations done on CPAP versus titrations done on C-Flex or EPR, you don't see the TEXA when you basically titrate on CPAP, and you do see it much more often than when you have some pressure support. And that fits perfectly what we know about ventilatory control. If you have the potential for unstable ventilatory control, what we call high loop gain, meaning you're close to having really just a fundamental central sleep apnea situation, but you're not quite there and you're stable as it is, you throw some pressure support on that, and it makes your breaths bigger, which then pushes you over the top. Your loop gain goes over what we call 1, and you're cycling. And so getting rid of that will get rid of a lot of the TEXA. And I think if EPR went away, we would see very little TEXA. And if you lower IPAP, it's even more of the same. You're not only not augmenting ventilation, but you're making the person do it themselves. And so you end up with a lot more stable ventilation. So I think we made a number of errors that were probably preventable if anybody had really sat down and thought about the physiology. And I'm happy to take some of that blame. I was working at Respironics and Philips Respironics as a lot of this stuff was evolving. I will say also that I was much more interested in getting past CPAP completely. I was interested in trying to find alternative methods of treating sleep, because I didn't believe that anybody had come up with something that made CPAP fundamentally better than just straight up average CPAP. And I got interested in this because I think now we do have something that makes it
Are
better.
you a sleep tech looking for new opportunities? Well, Medbridge Healthcare is one of the largest employers of sleep technologists, and they are growing. If you are a sleep technologist interested in a new position, potential paid relocation, or looking for a career advancement, consider a career with Medbridge Healthcare. Now back to the
So,
show.
talking about making it better, so what's the fundamental difference? I mean, when a layperson sees CPAP or a sleep technologist or sleep physician for that matter, what's the fundamental difference from bilevel or CPAP and now KPAP on the other side? What is the patient feeling, and what can the clinician understand from it?
You want to take that,
Hey,
Peter?
no, David, you're an artful expression in this regard.
Okay, I mean they're totally different. I mean, just from the basic point of view, in one case you've got the IPAP greater than the EPAP. You're supporting ventilation. But you're lowering the EPAP that can compromise the airway. Patients can, but in the other way, you are basically lowering the IPAP and keeping the EPAP where it is. And with KPAP, I mean, actually, you don't keep the expiratory pressure exactly where it was. You're actually keeping it quite a bit down during the early parts of expiration, only bringing it back to the optimal level towards the end of expiration. And I think that's the fundamental magic of this, is that you only need the optimal pressure, what I'll call the holding pressure, at the end of expiration, or maybe 3/4 or 1 second. And if you do that, you get the inflation of the lungs, you get the dilation of the airway, that when you start the next breath, you can drop the pressure. And if you try it, and you're asking what it feels like, it just fundamentally feels more comfortable. I was completely skeptical of all of this when Bill Noah called me up, and he flew an engineer out here the next day to Denver. And I was expecting to feel absolutely nothing different and send this guy home saying, I'm not interested in this. but they put me on it. I wore it, and it didn't take but 5 breaths or 10 breaths, and you could, they switch you back and forth between CPAP and KPAP, and it was just, it was night and day as far as I'm concerned. So it's not a subtle difference that is difficult for the patient. I think it just feels much more natural, like you're breathing for yourself rather than having a machine do it.
Dr.
So we
White,
were
have you been able to put this on any patients yet to really see the difference and maybe have an objective point of view from a patient standpoint?
We've done comfort studies just where you take naive patients and put them on it for a few minutes and ask them if it's more comfortable, and that has been overwhelmingly in favor. In terms of putting actual people on for sustained periods of time, all I'll say is this: one, there are a number of people in the company in sleepers that wear it every night that have sleep, and they love it. Okay, so but they don't count because they're biased. But we're just now starting what I would call a usability study, where we're going to put people on protocol on KPAP for about 3 months to see how they like it and see it, see if they identify any problems or anything. And we just started this, and the first person we put on it was actually turned out to be a very famous person. Can't tell you who it is for privacy reasons, but somebody that you would all recognize the name immediately, who was unable to use CPAP more than about an hour a night, and was very, angry about the whole thing. And we put him on KPAP, and he is now sleeping comfortably throughout the night. It was just this. So this is the first one that I have personally had any experience with somebody wearing KPAP over a sustained period of time. Because it's not FDA approved, and so we can't just start putting large number of people. You have to do it on protocol. But I was amazingly impressed because this guy's sort of a hard-nosed character. He was not going to be impressed easily. So it was a very good outcome.
Have you noticed much when it comes to interfaces, that's clearly a big challenge with any kind of positive airway pressure. What has been sort of the anecdotal or your observation of patients with the different types of interfaces, particularly the pillows, because that's really jetting that air right up the nares and sometimes could be extremely comfortable for a patient. What have you seen in that particular interface with the patients on KPAP?
We haven't done enough to be able to answer that question. The expectation is, most of the algorithms actually increase the inspiratory pressure to deal with the resistance of the nasal mask. So the IPAP's even higher than it would be otherwise, which again does exactly what you just said, jets the air through and can be quite uncomfortable. So my suspicion is that virtually everybody is going to be more, that use nasal pillows are going to get the biggest benefit in terms of the feeling, the comfort. But we had, most of the people we've been trying have been on nasal pillows when we just exposed them to it for short periods of time. We don't have enough experience to give you any hard evidence, meaningful at this particular time as to how nasal mask versus nasal pillows are going to respond to the new technology.
looking at it from the other side, there's a lot of overlooked attention to particularly the full face masks, into whether it's more important to baffle it and keep it quiet and to maintain the pressure in it. And very little attention now is being paid to the CO2 retention that goes on with these masks, with improper venting and whatnot, that really affect what you're trying to do in some cases, is improve ventilation. That we really need to pay more attention to it. And Bill Noah in particular has carried the torch for that. In fact, standing in the way of some badly manufactured masks that would cause a lot of CO2 rebreathing. So there is that problem to think about as well.
We're actually doing a study in my lab in Boston where we're looking at CO2 rebreathing, because people have not looked at this very much. And there is amazingly more than you might think there is. Okay, even with the regular P10, regular venting systems, you can get rebreathing at up to 8 or 10 centimeters of water. We never thought that'd be possible. And the other thing that nobody talks about at all is the fact that anything that's giving you CO2 rebreathing is also having you rebreathe a lower fraction of inspired oxygen. Your alveolar oxygen is 14%, okay? And you breathe that out and then rebreathe in 14% oxygen, and your PO2 is going to go down if you do that, if you have circuit rebreathing. So we think the rebreathing is a much bigger deal than a lot of people have thought historically. And again, we have an algorithm that's going to deal with that in a very straightforward way.
Will the patients that are experiencing that, will they be showing signs of morning headaches, what would be some things that could alert a clinician that maybe we don't have the right interface for this patient?
I think the main one is that they're going to wake up and, pull the mask off their face and tell you they feel extremely short of breath. Because
Yeah.
the problem is it feeds on itself. The more you hyperventilate because your CO2 is going up, the more you rebreathe. Okay, bigger tidal volume, higher respiratory frequency, you far exceed what the exhaust port can do, and so it just keeps building and building until the patient just rips the mask off and thinks something has gone awry. And I can't remember it's how many patients have told me that over the years, and I did not understand the mechanism that was causing that.
Dr. Gay, from your standpoint, what can we expect in the future or the coming future for KPAP, both for the patients as well as for the clinicians?
Well, first of all, we've got to understand where we've been coming into the world where auto CPAP was going to rescue us because it's that high pressure, that damn pressure goes so high and gets in the way of life that if we have a smart guy that's going to bring it down when we don't need it, that's the holy grail. Didn't work. In 2003, we thought a little better manipulation of that expiratory pressure with what we wrote about called a novel bilevel pressure system for the treatment of obstructive sleep. That was really the first flex thing. You may remember that, David. That was Pete Hill's magic
Yep.
PPAP, as proportional
Yeah.
PAP. And we thought this was really cool because it had that gradual decline and it was fast. It happened in every breath. So that must be good to eliminate that bad expiratory pressure. But that only built on itself. So if you get that good boost with bilevel PAP and you flex it on the back end, God, that's got to be the answer to the world. Our 2000 study was even more misleading. So we took patients that did not do well, and then after a period of trying to cozy up to them and make their mask fit well and play the whale music, we sent them home for a couple of weeks and they came back and only about 20% of them kept using their PAP. So we put them in the lab and we randomized to Biflex. We randomized to CPAP better titration. And we brought them back. And then we really misled people because only 28% of them now were wearing their CPAP compliantly. And now a whole 49% of the bilevel PAP people, that's significantly different, but not even half of them got better with a Biflex device. But since this was better than that, we could say there's a significant improvement by using Biflex. Bang, we got a winner. But somebody didn't take home the real lesson is probably, first of all, if you show anybody something different, they're going to like it better than the C crap that they gave up in the first place. So that led them. But the most important lesson here, and this is where I think KPAP has a winner, that if you lose these people up front, you're never going to rescue the majority of people with some kind of expiratory pressure manipulation, dropping the pressure that they need. That if you capture them up front with something that's intrinsically more comfortable, that's where the big win here is. And I think that's where the future is going to be a big benefit with KPAP. Don't you agree with that, David?
I agree with you too. And it's a really hard thing to test because you're talking about testing acceptance at all as opposed to just rejecting it sort of outright and walking away. So it's not easy to design a study to look at that. But I do think if more people accept it, that's a big win.
Well, docs, we sincerely appreciate you being here. We are getting out of time. So, just any final words or thoughts, Dr. White, on your side to just summarize what people should be seeing in the future?
Well, all I can say is this. We have a webinar that's coming up on the 12th and 13th of May that Peter and I and Bill Noah are going to do. And we're going to go into all the details around the physiology. We're going to go around in detail what Peter was talking about, the history of PAP and the history of bilevel and where it came from and what mistakes were made. And then Bill's going to explain all the physiology of upper airway collapse in the face of inspiratory and expiratory pressure. And then I'm going to go through all the data around KPAP and IPAP less than EPAP and explain all that, exactly where we stand. So we invite people to come to that. Hope they will. And we think it'll be very educational.
Fantastic. And Dr. K, anything from your side where people can
No,
get more information or anything
no,
else?
I think it's important to realize how easily we can be led into the majority thinking is got to be the right thinking. And when somebody like Bill Noah comes along and says, you know, you may be looking at this wrong, it's so hard to move the compass needle. And we're trying to do that with science and studies, but you know, we're going to need more studies to really prove this. But let's get the message out is what we really want to do.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much. We sincerely appreciate it. And we thank you so much for being here and sharing more about KPAP. We're really excited about changes and alternatives that are not out there right now that are coming on board. And everybody out there is waiting for something. So we thank you so much for sharing that information with us. And folks out there, thank you so much for joining us once again on this on our show. And we thank all our sponsors. We also want you to remember check out Sleep Review Magazine and continue to like, continue to subscribe, and most importantly, continue to share. And until next time, we say lights on.
Sleep well.
Bye, guys.
Cheers.
Before we go, we would like to thank our sponsor, Medbridge Healthcare. Medbridge Healthcare is developing innovative inpatient, post-discharge, and population health programs to screen comorbid conditions, diagnose, and treat sleep disorders. Learn more about their innovative solutions and career opportunities at medbridgehealthcare.com. Once again, you can learn more about their innovative solutions and career opportunities at medbridgehealthcare.com.
All right. It was another show, and that means it's time for some post-cows. And that was quite a show. Way too many big names on one show, isn't it?
Oh my gosh. To have both Dr. White and Dr. Gay on is quite a treat. I mean, these guys have done so much for sleep medicine over the last probably 3 decades, when you really think about their contribution, to what we do. I mean, you and I, as educators over the years, have quoted these guys in presentations we've done about CPAP, about bilevel, about, pulmonary disease. So it's fun to have them on the show and today and really get to hear their journey from really being in one paradigm where we're thinking about IPAP and its use in sleep disordered breathing to really rethinking it as maybe something that isn't suitable for the sleep apnea patient.
It's interesting you said that about 3 decades. Even after 3 decades, to see their passion for something like this new technology that's developing, just see their passion to see something new. It's absolutely amazing, and we need to see that hey, even old school folks that have been doing this forever, who kind of wrote the manual on how things are done. Hey, like you said earlier in pre-cals, nearly 400 papers between the two of them. The peer-reviewed articles. I shouldn't just call them papers. So peer-reviewed articles between the two of them. They're so excited that something new is out there, that there's an alternative for patients, that there's something that's going to make things even more comfortable. This is 30 years later.
Well, it kind of plays into that whole concept of sunk cost fallacy. That here we are as an entire industry trying to figure out how to make something work that simply wasn't working. And absolute kudos to Dr. Bill Noah for asking that question. I think the first time he did it was with the VCOM as an adapter that he was able to place in line, and I actually breathed on it
We
in
both
his
did.
office. Yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
in the very beginning, and it was very kind of super secret idea, but to see how that has really come forward from this adapter that could be placed in line to reduce inspiratory pressure, it blew my mind even back then, and really thinking, okay, this is a game changer to
Right.
where we are now, that it could actually be inside of a PAP device and provide that pressure relief on inspiration. And we've spent so much time, you and I, teaching people and training people to say it's expiratory relief, and here today we're hearing it's exactly not that.
Not that. Right. Right.
Yeah, so it flips everything upside down. And really, that question we posed to Dr. White in the beginning, have we been doing it backwards? It absolutely seems like it is. And I'm looking forward to their ongoing studies to look at adherence, and we certainly know that it's efficacious, but I'd love to see the long-term story of their adherence and what this is going to mean for these patients that usually end up quitting and failing CPAP.
And I agree. And for me, that's the exciting part, is to see this development and to see their passion and to see the whole journey of where it's going. And I just can't wait to see actually something that's put in production and be able to see patients on it afterwards.
Well, I think the webinar that Sleep World Magazine is going to be hosting here soon will give everyone a chance to hear the whole story. We're looking forward to that. So on that webinar, I think Dr. White had wrapped it up. It'll be him, Dr. Gay, and Dr. Noah. And boy, what a trifecta to get to hear about this journey with KPAP, where we've gone wrong with IPAP, and what the future looks like.
Agree. So with that, let's close. And folks out there, be sure to check out the webinar and learn a whole lot more about this. All right.
All right. Good show.
All right. Good show. So until next time, we say cheers.
Sleep Tech Talk is sponsored by React Health. Within our Luna PAP device line, each offering is FDA approved, encompassing CPAP, APAP, bilevel, and bilevel ST models. Our thoughtfully selected array of PAP interfaces and accessories complement our Luna PAP device line while accommodating diverse patient requirements.